Hello everyone, my name is Adam Michael Anthony Simpson and you're watching my YouTube channel, Adam M.A. Simpson. This is part 2 of my interview with Wendy De La Rosa, the behavioral scientist in Stanford's Graduate School of Business. Please enjoy this episode, and here's Wendy De La Rosa. And so now I want to pivot into the second question for this interview, which is, how does your research impact society? And I'm really interested in your research because it's a lot of times in academia we can ask these esoteric questions that don't necessarily have a clear link to the average person, but your research does. So it can really speak to everyone, and I want to, most people, and I want to hear more about that. So,
well, thanks, Adam. For me, that's a great compliment, because it was one of the things. I guess I was idealistic. Like when I started my PhD program, I thought everybody wants to answer questions that impact the world in a meaningful way, and like we're all trying to make the world a better place. And it turns out that like people are totally fine seeing esoteric topics that you have to make like 4 or 5 mental leaps to even get to some sort of level of consequence. I think, in business schools, that connection to real world behavior is much shorter, right? Because you have to, most of your papers, you have to show what's the business impact, what's the economic impact of whatever intervention it is that you're creating. For me, I wanted to not just show the business impact or the economic impact. I wanted to show, well, what's the impact on average low-income consumers. And that's not a topic that you would think about from, to be studied at a business school. But the reality is that if you don't have a stable middle class, you don't really have an economy.
Exactly.
And so it's in everybody's interest to have a sizable and healthy middle class, which in the United States right now, that middle class is shrinking. So some of the topics that I look at in my research is, well, for example, we know that a lot of low-income people are not claiming all of the benefits that they should claim. So I'll give an example that's very, I think, topical. As of the end of last year, there were 9 million economic impact payments, so stimulus checks that went unclaimed. And most of those were typically from very low-income people that don't have to file their taxes because they don't earn enough to file taxes, or people who may not have bank accounts, or unbanked or underbanked. And that's, to me, that's sort of heartbreaking, right? That's the population that needs the economic impact payment the most. And so one of the research projects that I have with amazing collaborators is looking at what are some psychological factors that we can play around with and change the messaging, essentially change how we talk about government benefits to increase people's desire in claiming government benefits. And we have a couple of field studies that show positive movement.
Nice.
Another study that I have looks at, well, if you're an hourly worker in the United States, you could get paid bi-weekly or weekly or sometimes even daily. But no one has really looked at, well, how does your payment frequency fundamentally impact your spending behavior and how you think about your resources? And so in my dissertation, I find that payment frequency can actually change how you think about your resources, so that the more frequently you get paid, even though the amount of money you get paid is held constant, you feel a little bit wealthier, and as a result, you end up spending more. And so in a nutshell, I'm just like really interested in all of these underexplored societal factors that really drive our spending behavior, or our likelihood of claiming money from government or other sources. And I think given the current economic times, more and more people are interested in this type of work because 20% of Americans in some cities don't have a job right now.
Yeah.
Right? That's sort of the reality that we're going to live in for a little while. And unless we understand how to help these people, how to help people get back on their feet, it's going to be a long and bumpy road.
And as you said, the messaging is important, which is what you've investigated in your field studies. And I think that's very important to touch upon. You know, my wife is a medical resident, and they have to really focus on messaging for, you know, COVID, why it's important to wear the mask, and, you know, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I think, you know, the reality is that we have to stop treating humans as superhumans.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to recognize that psychology is a huge factor that dictates our behavior.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, like, COVID is a great example, right? Like, you can show facts up and down, you know, why this vaccine is something that everybody should take. But that's not really going to motivate certain anti-vaccine people, right? Like, they're not persuaded by facts, they're persuaded by other factors. And those are the types of factors that we need to look into. In my own work, one of the things that I show is that well, I don't want to give myself too much credit, but others have shown this as well, that, like, by and large, people fundamentally know what they need to do to improve their financial security, right? Like, it's not this big myth, right? I need to work more, save more, spend less. And it turns out that there's this beautiful research paper that shows that financial education programs don't really change financial behaviors, right? So, like, all of us, like, really know what to do.
Social
it's just
factors.
Really hard to do it.
Social
right? It's
factors.
our environment. It's our environment. Like, we all really know what we need to do to lose weight. And like, most of us at some point in time have tried to lose weight. Like, the equation is really simple. The barrier is not a knowledge barrier. It's just that actually it's really hard
to do it right now. Exactly. Yeah. It's a social factor. Yeah. Wow. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. And I think the connection to weight loss is very it's unique. Everybody has tried to lose weight at some point in their life, so that's wow.
Right.
Thank you. And so I want to ask this third question, which is my favorite question of the interview, which is what misconceptions of graduate school would you like to dispel? And, like, think of your young researcher not really sure about going to graduate school or what it entails, but has these questions that they want to answer, and they don't know how, like, to go about doing that. So what misconceptions would you like to, you know, dispel so that they're more informed?
Yeah. I would say, like, one of the misconceptions is that there's this sort of fork in the road that you have to choose between, like, working in industry and working in academia. And a lot of my research blends the two, right? I work with fintech companies and banks to be able to run my experiments so that I can say intervention A versus intervention B helps increase savings, as an example. And I think that's just, like, such a false dichotomy sometimes that we create. If you have interesting research questions and you have a sense of how you can help the world, then, like, the tool in which you can use that, like, whether it's online surveys or in-lab experiments or field studies in partnership with companies, like, that almost kind of doesn't matter, right? Like, that's just whatever tool you pick up to try to answer the question. But what should matter the most is, do you want to be the one that tries to answer that question? Like, for me, because this is, you know, it's a hard field, but it's not impossible, right? Like, so many people who are less are less intelligent than some of our viewers have gotten a PhD. So that means that you can also get a PhD. But I think the one thing I just want to sort of hone in is that it's the experience is what you make it. Like I get really excited because I want to be the expert on how payment frequency impacts consumers, right? Like I want to be the one to try to answer those questions because I stay up at night thinking about that, because every time I run an experiment, I see my family in those participants, right? I'm just like, how is this going to impact my family in one way, shape, or form? And if you don't have that passion and that drive, if you're getting a PhD for other reasons, because like you just want to be called doctor, like it's gonna be a terrible road.
Yes.
It's gonna be a terrible road. Like you need to have that passion, and you need to be the person to say, yeah, I really care about answering this question, and I want to get to the truth.
Wow. So thank you for this interview, Wendy. This was very informative, and I'm so happy that you're here today. Oh, I also wanted to mention your TED Talks. Can you speak about that, like, for the viewers?
So I have a web series that I created in partnership with TED. They're short weekly episodes. A new one drops every Wednesday on how to help yourself improve your financial security. And so it's not going to be me preaching at you. I'm going to share some of the mistakes that I've made, but together, right, we're going to create an action plan. And so next week will be episode 2 of our first season, and we're going to be talking about how do you manage your finances in a couple. Have you talked about your financial goals with a couple? I'm married now, but 2 weeks into dating my husband, I was like, what's your credit score? Let's pull that credit. And I quickly realized that I was in the minority, but in that episode, hopefully people will see that, you know, we talk about other taboo subjects all the time, from past relationships to sex, and it's really important to get on the same page in terms of your financial goals, because if you do decide to marry this person one day, the number one reason for divorce is financial disagreements. So like, let's get on the same page. Yes. So if you're interested in that, go to TED.com. The series is called Your Money and Your Mind, because again, I'm from the boogie down. I don't love boogie, but I'm trying to talk about this taboo subject in a way that we can all understand it, in a way that I wanted to learn about it. So yeah, that's hot, and a new one's dropping in 2 days.
All right, thank you, Wendy. I enjoyed this.
No problem, and it is my pleasure to be on this channel. Thank you, Adam, for all the great work that you're doing. I think, like, I wish I had this resource when I was going through my application process of just getting a sense of what life in academia is like. So thank you for all that you're doing. You don't have to do it.
Thank you for that. That really means a lot. Thank you so much.
Bye, friend.
Bye. Thanks for watching part 2 of this interview with Wendy De La Rosa. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel to support this effort, and stay tuned for next week.